The best leaders are not in a frenzied state. They are not overwhelmed. If you
Mm.
think that I'm going to sit at a table to discuss a promotion because you're so busy and you're working so hard and you're just overwhelmed, nope. If you want to get promoted, you need to be in a state of ease. So attaching to this busyness or this I'm worthy because I am busy, you're only harming yourself. It's not getting you anywhere. You're on that hamster wheel. And if you want to be a great leader, you need to pause, process why that's happening, get some strategies around how you're going to approach that, and step forward in this state of balance and ease. And when we attach a badge to I'm balanced and I'm at ease and I connect easily with people, and that creates buy-in and influence.
Welcome to Leading the Way podcast, where you'll learn neuroscience-backed ways to lead more effectively and have more fun at work with what you already have. Hey there, it's Chris, and welcome to Leading the Way. I am so delighted that you decided to join us for another amazing episode. And Diane Taylor is with us today. Diane, thank you so much for being a guest.
You're very welcome, Chris. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's so exciting. And folks, you're in for a treat. So I'm going to tell folks about you, Diane, because you know about you. I know a little bit about you, but they don't yet. So let
All
me
right.
tell them a little bit about you, and then we'll dive right in. So Diane Taylor is the founder and principal consultant of Glow Leadership. She's a speaker and executive coach with over 30 years of professional experience across several industries. This is not her first rodeo. Her first book, Elevate Potential, A Conscious Approach to Success, debuted as a #1 bestseller. Congratulations! And hot new releases and Manage It Under Leadership. She's passionate about helping other leaders discover and ignite their highest potential in their business, career, and their personal lives all together. What sets her apart from coaches are her deeply intuitive and sharp insights that create the awareness to identify those real barriers, things that are really holding people back, some really simple solutions, and ways to get meaningful results pretty quickly. Through her own personal childhood tragedy, which we'll talk a little bit about, she learned the hard way how to take her own power back, take care of her own well being, and that enabled her to emerge as a victor. So it's her purpose and passion to hold a space for others, attempting to overcome what's truly holding them back for the life and the success they truly desire. Dan, again, thanks so much for being here. We're entering into another year, 2025, as we're recording this. People, of course, listen to this all times of the year, but a lot of things come up for people. They'll set New Year's resolutions that they might not keep. They've got new budgets in the corporate space, maybe some new hires, some new objectives. And yet there can be things that maybe they're not able to achieve those things as hard as they work. All the things that they've done aren't moving them forward. What do you see that's really holding people back from success behind all the myths? What do you see that's going on there?
Ah, I think the biggest thing is we tend to give our power to external sources. So, um, or, we make those resolutions, we write them down and we forget about them. The teams that I work with, I typically work with like a team of a senior leader and their people,
Yeah.
which helps them stay accountable to the goals they set, but their team also. And then they have some insight on how the team is performing from an objective standpoint, which really buttons things down, creates the support, but builds the winning team.
Mm,
Think about, sports is my favorite analogy. I like to think about my teams as I'm building Super Bowl teams. I'm here to
mm,
win. I'm here to get results. And, Super Bowls teams don't do it without a coach.
right.
So a lot of people think, oh, well, I might not need that. Or maybe they've experienced it in the past, but they didn't see the results. Some of my teams I've worked with for my longest team, I've worked with for 8 years now,
Wow.
and seen them grow incredibly. But, so if you want to work individually, that's one thing, but I tend to work with the team and build the winning team, and support the key players on that team, which I find creates an ultimate result and win.
No, 100%. It's such a great example, Super Bowl team too, because it's not just one coach, right? The leader might be the head coach or the general manager in that example or analogy, but there's dozens of coach, offense, defense, statisticians, folks up in the box, and then
Huh.
all the practice, right, which probably outweighs the playtime 10 to 1 or more.
Absolutely.
It's a great analogy. Do you notice that in the teams that you work with? And I think you mentioned, like, is there this notion of practice and performance, right? That there's certain muscles that need to be built up, right, in terms of being a super performer, and or just realizing your own superpower and getting your own out of your own way. Do you see that in the space?
Yeah, like the professional development model says that 10% of what we learn is in the classroom, 20% is through coaching, and 70% is on the field, right?
Mm,
In the workplace. So because I work with the team, I get to learn over time how the business works and what the objectives are, and see how everyone is moving towards that, and create challenges and goals that are for them to move forward from the coaching session to the actual workplace.
mm,
I do that. Plus, what is holding each human back, right? Because it's not, it's we can go through someone's job description, and someone might be really great at their job, but they might be not able to create influence.
mm-hmm,
And you know, oftentimes, senior leaders like me to deal with that change and growth in humans, because it's uncomfortable, and it's um but that's where the magic happens, right? It's what's holding us back as the human. That is, if we all work through that and gain awareness, self-awareness is, in my opinion, the number one leadership strength. We can move forward, be more conscious humans, and that develops a much stronger team that gets significant results with so much more ease.
mm. That's so important too. I mean, we're as we're recording this, there's so many factors, outside stressors on the workplace and on individuals. There's the Gallup poll that says that we're at the lowest employee engagement ever at 30% engagement. Economic things have been happening, where there might be layoffs or there's more strain on resources, financial and otherwise.
Yeah.
Election year here in the States, there's always some turmoil around that with change.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure over your 30-year career, you've seen all sorts of other different stressors. There's no shortage of them. They're always going to come at us. Is it different? Is it a different approach with those? Do you acknowledge those sort of things? Okay, these are real things. We're going to do something about it, or is it just kind of irrespective of what's going on in the outside world? We're just going to decide to win, whatever winning means for that team. Eh, is it one or the other of those, or somewhere in between that you see?
Well, it's somewhere in between, because we need to first of all acknowledge those things do affect people, and when someone doesn't know how to take their power back, focus on their circle of influence, those factors can have great impacts on how people feel and therefore show up. So
Mm,
when the reality is life is hard, that's the life experience. We come here to have challenges, to grow and overcome them as humans. That's what I
mm,
call the life experience. It's when we move to a state of consciousness, meaning I understand that life is happening for me and this is to grow me, that we can then take our power back and say, okay, what's in my circle of influence? What are those things that are holding me back or taking up space in my energy or my mind, so that I can release those? And engagement is down, but we're also in a mental health crisis, and people are on this stress hamster wheel, um, because no one has ever taught them how to take their power back, um, work on themselves, have authority over their life. because we have been taught to give our power externally to the government, to healthcare, to big pharma, these factors, as opposed to I'm in charge of me. I'm the CEO of my life. And when I do that, I create more vitality, more energy to move through the life challenges at a different level. But currently everybody is just like zombieing, getting through the day, wake up, get the breakfast, get in the car, commute to work, do their 8 to 10 hours, drive home, eat something unhealthy because we're so exhausted.
Right.
And we were on this, I call it the hamster wheel of life. Just go, 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 like barely getting by.
Yeah.
And when we shift that and, create this energy and take that back, we can be truly unstoppable.
I love that. And the geek in me is thinking about, if this were an algorithm that we were looking at in the computer world and it had this dysfunction, we would have all sorts of ideas on how to correct it, right? We would expect the same algorithm to get us better results. We would need to touch and tweak these elements. And for those of you that aren't geeks, any sort of system, a manufacturing system that was dumping bottles in the ground, we wouldn't let it keep dumping bottles in the ground. We'd fix that environment. But yet, when it's ourselves, it's somehow different, right? And it's really interesting. Are you seeing when you build folks up? It's been my experience as a leader, when we get curious and we think about how we build folks up, there are less of those, I'll call them stinger or critical issues, right? Where you're going to have to put someone on a performance improvement plan, or those outliers that most leaders really despise doing. Do you see less of those occurring as your focus shifts as a leader to building people up?
Yeah. I would say that 80% of the time that will work. And then there's the other times when that 20% of time where someone has such big walls that they are not in a coachable state, that sometimes the performance improvement chat is the moment they need to kind of shake them awake.
Right.
And
Right.
understand you need to shift, you need to change, you need to be different, or there's going to be consequences
Right.
to your behaviors and the way you're showing up.
Right.
So I like to always start from the positive perspective and see where people are at. And then you start to see the people that are going to be highly coachable and highly engaged in the process of change, and understand we're either growing or dying. And then you're going to the blockers, I call them, that don't want to make a change. And then that's where we need to move. Or in terms of building winning teams, there's times when we need to eliminate players, right? Because
Right.
part of the thing about building this high energy, high performing team is taking care of the A players, moving the B players to A players, and moving out the C players. That's
Okay.
reality. If
Yep.
someone is not going to be able to step up and be on the bus where we're going, they're holding the entire team back, and we want to set them free to be happy somewhere else.
Right.
So yeah.
No, that's so true. The most supportive thing really there is in setting them up for a win is, at least right now, they're probably not a win in this team. They could come back, life could change, it could get better. But yeah, that's so important. And I hear in your voice too, this isn't like someone's going through a life hardship and they dip from an A to a C player and they're going to come back to A. This is someone that's consistently C, D, F. You've made efforts, you give a second chance, it's just not working. Then you have to be a leader and make the hard decision to do that. And that's tough, even if it's someone that's a known distractor. There's some like human connection thing, I think, that makes it tough, even when it's the right thing to do, to say goodbye in the workplace. And so many managers I've seen shy away from that or pass that issue along to the next leader, and it doesn't magically get better.
No, it doesn't. And I think, if you have a plan where you as a leader, understand that someone isn't performing to the level or has the right mindset, that's, that's a great thing. And I think, if you have a plan where you as a leader, understand that someone isn't performing to the level or has the right mindset, that's a great thing. And I think, if you have a plan where you as a leader, understand that someone isn't performing to the level or has the right mindset, that's bringing value to the team,
Yeah.
to have a strategy in place to try to make an improvement so that you've tried everything, you didn't see the change, you're hoping to see that change, but if you don't, then the plan. And it is one of the hardest things for leaders to do, is to have to end the employment relationship. And I support people with that process, often. So it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be terrible. um,
Right.
it will be hard, absolutely.
Sure.
But I also find that when you see that person 3, 6 months later, they're all of a sudden they look, younger, and they're happy.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, I would imagine it would be similar. And I don't know. I'd love your input on this to grief and loss at a smaller scale. I mean, when we go through the steps, however painful they are, we only have to go through them once or maybe twice, but we're not going through them every single day, right? And
yeah,
I don't want to make it more dramatic, but it is similar. There is a loss there, even if it's a hard thing. There's change, which our reticular activating system does not like, so it's going to
right.
get drop some adrenaline and cortisol on us while we're going through this. But if you go through the process, you make your choice. You're right. You really are helping out everyone. And yes, it's painful for a bit, but it's interesting. You brought up football. Dan Lanning, who's a coach of the Oregon Ducks, says, everything worth having is on the other side of hard.
Yes.
And it's that sort of thing. There's this little moment of hard, and then you move forward.
Absolutely. And one of my modules in one of my hybrid leadership development programs is change leadership. And it's one of the most valued modules for my clients, because once we understand that change is an emotional state, we spend a lot of time in our minds and in our bodies in North America. There's a focus on the mind. The biggest compliment you can say is, oh, you're a thought leader.
Right.
But change happens the the emotional, in the heart.
Right.
We go through these emotions, and culturally, a lot of us have not been taught how to process our emotion or how to move through that emotion. So when
Right.
we understand, I keep the change curve handy and whip it out, and when we can see, okay, I'm here, but I'm going to move through it,
Yeah.
and it's going to be okay. When I see someone moving through a change and they're angry, it's like, oh, good, they're out of shock and denial. They're moving through the
They're making
process. Look,
progress.
this
Right.
is progress. So
Yeah.
it's really helpful to understand that. Absolutely.
100%, 100%. I was, as you're saying that, I was remembering a person very, very smart in neuroscience, um, Dr. Bruce Perry, and he was chatting about how so many decisions are made in our limbic system, which is where all heightened emotions are and the chemicals around emotions are. And what was really interesting, I didn't know this till he said it, is the whole notion of language doesn't exist there. So as
Right.
much as we think we're these data and insight based decision makers, brain science is really clear. We make our decisions mostly in our limbic system, might be influenced by the cerebral cortex.
Yeah.
And we're surprised that we're emotional decision makers. Like, that's how we're wired. Like, it's not
Yeah.
a bad thing. It's not like that's wrong. It's we're literally wired that way. So we shouldn't really be surprised that impulse and all those other things can happen
Yeah.
because we can be stuck in the limbic system.
Exactly. The sports analogy I like to use for this one is, you're and there's more penalties in hockey. So we'll switch to hockey for,
Okay.
and you're down in the game and you're on the bench, and coach says to you, no penalties. We cannot take any penalties. And everyone's like, yeah, 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 absolutely. If we're down one person, we are going to be in a tighter position. That doesn't make sense. We can't take any penalties.
Right.
Skate out onto the ice. Person skates by you, trash talks you, and next
Right.
thing your gloves are off and you're pounding the guy taking a penalty,
Right.
because that you're triggered into an emotional state which trumps the mind.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so true, and that's a funny one. And even though luckily in society we don't pummel people physically, but
Right.
how often do we do that mentally to an idea, right, at work that maybe should see the light of day, or we don't agree with it, but it's maybe the right way to go or even consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, but our neural pathway can go burp and be in that fight, flight, freeze state or emotional state. Oh, it's
Yeah,
so
and it
true.
doesn't always come out in it. Like we can be triggered by something and then we start to get passive aggressive
Right.
or withdrawn in the workplace, or these are the behaviors that when we sit down to decide to promote someone, it's not about can they do their job, it's not about oh do they have that advanced degree, it's about oh they kind of withdraw, or they're kind of passive aggressive, or their behaviors, the way they show up
Yeah,
doesn't really help create an environment and create influence.
it's true.
That's the stuff.
It's true. And people remember, even if it's one event out of a whole year and it was just a few minutes, they remember that gloves off moment and will, right or wrong, will have the filter about the person like they're always this way, even if it's a one-time thing.
Right, exactly.
It's weird how that imprints on people for a long time. It takes a lot of work to undo. Not that I know anything about that, but it takes a lot of time to undo those events. And yes, that has happened to me in the past, where unintentionally it happened in a meeting. I was triggered. We're all human. And yeah, it's too late once that happens. So it's so important to balance that out. I'm
Yeah.
curious, let's pivot to your book a little bit. I'm really excited and congrats for having a number one bestseller. That's an awesome
Thank
thing.
you.
What motivated you and what's your why behind creating this book? Is it your experience? Is it you're seeing a gap in the workplace? What got you going to write it?
I think that I have so much joy when I'm working with a group in one of my leadership development programs, and what they do, I work with them over time in one of those programs, and then we have a culmination and celebration of learning at the end.
Mm,
To be able to see the change that people are experiencing in my programs lights me up. There's no bigger reward. So I just felt compelled to help more people,
nice.
to reach a bigger audience. And not everybody has an opportunity where their company is going to say, oh, we're bringing Diane in and she's going to do her leadership fundamentals program with you. And, you have this opportunity to grow. So I wanted to create an accessible point to help more people,
Mm.
and share that on a wider scale. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and clearly you have if you've hit that number one bestseller status and uh it's nice too. There's sometimes there are folks, as you mentioned, like their company's not funding it or whatever else, but if they want to take the action, I would imagine there are things, I haven't read all of your book yet, but I would imagine there's quite a bit in there that will allow them to progress even on their own. Is that true? Even if you're just doing it as an
Yeah.
end of one.
Yeah. So my book is sort of in three sections. The first, I talk about my own story and how that had, impacts and triggers for me and how I showed up and went through that. And then some general principles in the middle. And then the last third is really all about you. And
Mm,
it's walking you through, it's a roadmap to work through some of these things, to let some of these things go, to process some of these, trigger points so that you can let go of that thing, create a more holistic um, person,
yeah.
and just be in a space where you can shine and create success with ease. So definitely if you read the book and you do the exercises in the last third of the book, it would be, it could be change. It could change your life.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm curious too, just a little unfair scenario here, but one I do see with leaders is we can get really caught up in being busy and putting fires out and answering all the emails and filling out all the forms and doing the status reports. And that can feel like that's the right thing to do. We get a dopamine hit from it. A lot of other leaders are doing it. And then we're quote unquote too busy to do these other things. And I see that a lot. I'm too busy to have the
Yep.
meeting, and just it happens. And I've been there in the past too. So no judgment there at all. But we can get super hyper focused on being busy, and we're so busy we can't do things. And so, that trends. We can get stuck in that busyness.
Yeah.
I know you talk about creating space. So how does someone who is a leader, let's say, it's so stuck in that, busy is my religion at work. How do you help them get to it? And you got to create the space to be able to do this work.
Right.
How do you get them there?
Um, Well, first of all, recognizing that busy is a badge that we have attached worth to, and it actually doesn't have the worth that we assign it. A lot of people think that, oh, if I'm really busy and I'm more important than
Mm-hmm.
more.
Sure.
The best leaders are not in a frenzied state. They are not overwhelmed. If you
Mm.
think that I'm going to sit at a table to discuss a promotion and promote you because you're so busy and you're working so hard and you're just overwhelmed, nope. If you want to get promoted, you need to be in a state of ease. So
Mm.
attaching to this busyness or this, I'm worthy because I am busy, um, you're only harming yourself. You're harming your physical self. You're harming your mental health. It's not getting you anywhere. Um, you're on that hamster wheel. And if you want to be a great leader, you need to pause, process why that's happening, get some strategies around how you're going to approach that, and step forward in this state of balance and ease. And when we create, attach a badge to, I'm balanced and I'm at ease and I connect easily with people. And that creates buy-in and influence. So when I do that, they do what I want them to do.
Mm.
All of this sudden, things move forward, our objectives are achieved, and we're not stressed out and leading to a place of burnout.
Wow. Yeah, it's so important. And we're modeling behavior just like parents do with their kids. That's one of the biggest, most powerful things. While they're not our kids, as a leader, folks on our team and other teams are looking to that, or looking to the true thought leaders on their behavior patterns and modeling it
Right.
subconsciously. We're not consciously, I'm going to model Chris because he's really calm. Or I'm going to model Chris because he's really busy, and busy equals merit badges and rewards,
Right.
and I've got my sashes full.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
no, I love that. So I know we talked before this a little bit. You've got a story about letting go as part of that, creating space. You mind telling our audience more about that?
Yeah. So in order to, change, like you had talked about, doing the same thing over and over again, and how Albert Einstein says is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity.
Right.
So we need to, if we want things to be different, we want new things in our life, we want more success, more relationship connectedness, more abundance, more joy. We need to create space for that. And
Mhm.
human beings are terrible at letting go. We don't want to let go.
Right.
And the story I share in my book is about when I was in university. I was probably 19 or 20 years old, and my boyfriend at the time wanted to go skydiving for his birthday. So that was very scary,
Oh,
but because my desire, my need to be close to him was bigger than that fear, I went along and we spent the day, I would say, from the morning till even after lunchtime, we spent the time preparing. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? How do you position yourself? Then when this happens, you do this
mm.
to make ourselves, less afraid, I think. Then we launch off and it's this 6-seater plane. And I don't know how many, you know, feet we were in the air, but we were in
Enough.
there. And I was pretty afraid. And then they opened the side of the plane door and the wind just gushed right in. And I was like frozen in fear. And fortunately, there was a few people that went in before me, and then it was my turn. And I moved up, and this was just, you were jumping on your own, not with
Mm.
supporting you. So I
Okay.
inched out along the plane's wing of the plane,
Right.
and I was like knuckled onto,
Yep.
grasping so tightly. And the instructor actually had to bang on my hands to
Mm.
for me to let go. I was not going to let go on my own.
Wow.
And I let go, and there was that immediate, terrifying drop that
Yeah.
feels so scary and awful. And then my chute opened, and there was this ease, and I could see for miles, and it felt like I was flying, and it was so joyful.
Mm.
And so that experience for me really shows how we as human beings move through the idea of letting go.
Yeah.
So yeah, letting go is not easy.
No. And sometimes it sounds like you need someone to bang on your fingers a little bit there so you can
Yeah, exactly.
colloquially get there. And it, you know, doesn't sound like you became a professional skydiver, but that journey gave you a model of, oh, I can be afraid. That's a
Yeah,
normal human emotion, and I might need some help to get through this. But the pain is short,
yeah,
and the joy is long. So,
yeah,
what a great model.
yeah. And the anticipation of the pain
Yes.
is long too. Right.
Right.
Between the what was that free fall and that pain versus how many hours of anticipatory pain that I
Right.
induced on myself was significant.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I've heard this too, and I'm not sure if in your expertise you heard it as well, but the what happens chemically on our brain. So I think a lot of people could have a visceral reaction unless you're a skydiver to, oh my gosh, falling. It's a big like fear and brings up a lot of energy. Depending on the human, you can have, the color blue or a coffee machine or the status report can create the same chemical mixture in our brain as falling, as, what we would call a more tragic thing. Our brain doesn't care, right? We can get really
Yeah.
judgy about like, well, that's a big thing and this isn't a big thing. Well, your brain doesn't care. It's shooting the same chemistry around. So your
Right.
workaround, I would imagine your workaround blockers and all that, you're dealing with the very same thing as how do we not make this a fight, flight, freeze response? And how do we get you up to the awesome imagining, problem solving part of your brain? Is that a thing for you, or am I just making that all up?
Definitely. And it takes a long time to make that fight or flight go away. So where I start working with clients is in the identifying when that feeling is coming
Mm,
and when you feel that, what tools can you use to shift,
nice.
to downgrade that, stressor, right?
Right.
Because it's within us. It's hardwired in us from the days, we used to have to run away from a saber-toothed tiger or be
Right.
eaten, right? So that's part of our makeup. So as a conscious human being, we need to be able to identify, oh, that feeling's coming on. What are my, oh, I'm getting hot. My
Right.
chest feels tight. Okay, I need to downgrade this because I have power over myself.
Right.
And so, what are my strategies that work for me? And everybody has different strategies, but
Hmm.
how can I downgrade that so I don't spiral?
Love it. Love it. And it's as you said, when we first started talking, is, taking that personal control and not letting outside factors determine your life or keep you on autopilot. You're making, she said so well, a conscious choice, and later a subconscious choice, to set yourself up for a win.
Yeah.
I love that. I would imagine a lot of folks hearing this are like, I need this at my work, and I need some help doing this, and I need that coach, and I don't want to have as many penalties. What's a great way to reach out to you, and what's that look like as people reach out and connect with you?
Yeah. So they can reach out to me either via my website, glowleadership.com, Diane at glowleadership.com. They can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Glow Leadership. And how that looks depends on what their needs are. So I have, a group coaching retainer for, building winning teams and supporting the team. I have 2 spots left for 2025. And then I have my hybrid leadership development programs. Or if you have an event that you're planning and you need a keynote speaker, they can contact me for that as well. Or they can go to Amazon and buy my book.
Nice. I'll
Yeah.
just put ands instead of the or there. Let's have them do all the things. So,
Yes. And exactly. Well, and that's sort of, how I've found once I start working with people, they see the value and they want to, continue and go deeper. So I've enjoyed getting to know my clients rather than, I know a lot of coaches or consultants come in and do one thing and then, parachute out. And I like to build relationships with and almost be like a advisor to the team on a longer term basis so that we can really get results.
Right. That's so important. And thank you for leading in that way and showing up in that way and doing it so authentically. The business world and the rest of the world needs it so much. And thank you before we wrap up, I do have a question for you, but I want to thank you for being on the show and sharing your expertise and really encourage people that if this is even a little bit of a thing, or someone that this has helped, share this podcast with them. Everything will be in the show notes. So if you're exercising or driving or whatever else, please don't hurt yourself. They'll be there for you later and you can click on them and engage. Before we close out though, I love to ask every guest, what's something that you're thankful or grateful for today? And it can't be this podcast. How's that?
Okay. There's so much to be grateful for. But I would have to say the biggest thing in my life that I'm grateful for is that I did the work that I outline in my book. I learned how to do that. There was no book for me, but I did learn how to do that. And I got myself out of victim state into a champion mindset. And now I have the opportunity to help other people do that and to help people shine bright. And I'm so grateful that my path has led me to do that.
Wow. That's beautiful and powerful both. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being on the show. Listeners, thank you for being here. Yes, I would love your like and subscribe and all those magical things for the algorithm, but more importantly, share this with a friend. It's the season of giving. It really should always be the season of giving, but you probably know someone that could benefit from checking this out and listening to it. And that's why I do the podcast and it's out there, is I want to make sure folks get the resources they need to be super successful in their careers and in life. So please share it. Again, Diane, thank you for being on Leading the Way.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's my pleasure.
All right. Bye for now, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Leading the Way podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss other great episodes like this one. And if you're ready for more in your workplace, be sure to go to aintent.com. You'll find lots of free tools, assessments, and ways to engage directly with us to get your own epic results. We'll see you there.